and welcome to Cultivating Conversations. I'm Clare Nasir. In this show, we're talking solutions to food waste. Rotting food produces methane, and to put that in perspective, with 7.9 billion people on the planet, a third of food goes to waste. The volume of unnecessary methane due to food waste being emitted into the atmosphere daily is frankly quite absurd. And given the large number of people hungry in the world, this is not only a drain on water, land and energy, it's totally unfair. Yet the problem is so solvable. There are many solutions out there, from growing fruits and veg close to highly populated areas like vertical farms, buying locally and seasonally, and being mindful of use. However, many across the world, the issue is a lack of refrigeration, and that's why it's so important to support those who are creating clever solutions. So let's hear from one company doing just that. Ryp Labs, based out of Seattle, are award-winning. Amongst many recognitions, they won Best Packaging at the Food Innovation Awards 2019, Most Sustainable Innovation at South Summit, Clean Tech 50 to Watch in 2022, and most recently, COP27's Top Global Startup. Introducing Ozgur Yildirim CTO and Moody Soliman, CEO and co-founder of Ryp Labs, who began by telling me how it felt to win their latest award.
It was really once in a lifetime experience for myself, especially because being originally from Egypt and having COP27 take place in Egypt serendipitously was quite an experience. In general, I think winning that kind of award is validation to the work that we're doing and the impact of the work that we're doing here at Ryp Labs. And so it made it particularly exciting to win this award.
Ozgur, you're obviously an integral part of the team. How does it feel to know that people have really got an eye on your product and it's just going to just get bigger and better from here on in, particularly when you've been recognized?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great recognition. I think about the importance of the problem that we are trying to solve. Reducing food waste, it's a huge problem that has a lot of secondary impacts like environmental impact, climate impact, and also recognition of the promise of our technology platform that we are developing in order to address that big, huge problem. So seeing that we are being recognized by many different organizations and institutions feels really great. And the interesting thing that, from my perspective, is yes, we are operating in agtech space. We are trying to extend the shelf life of perishable foods, but oftentimes we are referred to as a climate tech organization too, and that kind of highlights and I think underlines the importance of what a big problem that is and how many different factors go into it.
So Moody, let's just get into the nitty-gritty, as we say in England. Tell us what your product is, why you created it, and what is the challenge? What was the challenge you were facing there and trying to solve?
Yeah, so when we're asked that question, Claire, what we really like to point to is just really the staggering statistics behind food waste, right? And that literally every minute that passes by, we're wasting enough food to feed over 1 million people for a day. And we know that very same food waste will typically end up in landfills, releasing over 6,000 metric tons of CO2 gas. And that's happening every single minute. And so it's clearly an economical problem, a social problem, an environmental problem. And when we looked at this from Ryp Labs' perspective, we recognized that if we're going to have a meaningful impact with this type of solution, it has to be easy to use, can be applied anywhere along the supply chain, and is scalable. So it can be used by the largest of distributors and packing houses to the smallest smallholder farmer. And so that's exactly what we did at Ryp Labs. So over the last 5 years, what we ended up doing was turning to nature and researching biomimicry solutions. So how can we harness the power of nature to repurpose that and use it to extend the shelf life of fresh produce and therefore reduce food waste? And so we ended up developing a natural, safe, bioactive formulation that can be applied to a variety of surfaces, including stickers, and that's really our flagship product. where then you can simply peel the sticker, apply it to your fresh produce, releases those same bioactive, safe, natural compounds to extend the shelf life. And therefore, we've introduced a simple, scalable, and easy to use solution that can be applied anywhere along the supply chain.
It's just fantastic. I mean, I've looked at your website, I've read everything about you. It's so neat and it works. I don't think it's rocket science. And it's, as you say, a global problem we have here. And the amount of emissions, which are just not necessary, they really aren't. So, what you're doing is just extending the life of fresh produce. Oscar, tell me what produce really responds best to this product.
Yeah, so as we said, we are developing technology platforms using a lot of nature-inspired solutions to extend the shelf life of perishable fruits and vegetables produce, right? So it turns out there are a lot of different types of failure modes or the ways fresh produce get wasted, and then their shelf life is limited. So we are focusing on a technology platform that actually tries to suppress the microbial spoilage or fungal spoilage. So if you think about a lot of the products that you buy and enjoy at home, for example, berries are a prime example of that. We all love them, but they don't have a very long shelf life, right? If you just forget them on the counter, after a few days, they will start getting moldy and spoiled. So those kind of products, I think are especially interesting for our technology to be applied to.
But how does it work with berries? Because obviously, I can see how it would work for a mango or a banana, but with something which is so numerous, tell me how that translates.
That's an excellent question. So we talked about the example of applying stickers to individual pieces of fruit, right? Obviously, berries. If you have like strawberries, you're not gonna put one sticker on each berry, right? And that kind of goes back to the versatility of our technology platform that we are developing. We are really developing these bioactive, nature-inspired solutions that can be put in many different types of product formats that are suitable for different applications. In the case of berries, excellent question. Most of the time, as you know, they come in little boxes or clamshells and some kind of container. So we are also developing our technology platform to be applied directly to the insides of these boxes or containers. In that way, you don't actually have to put a sticker on each berry, but you can put our product on the inside of the box that contains the berries and get the exact same effect.
It's clever. I mean, always try and work out how I can keep my bananas fresh for longer. And one of the things was suggested that you don't put it with any other fruit and it just like has to be isolated. But everybody's got busy lives and you want something which is functional and pretty much does the job for you. Tell me now about your location because you're based in Europe and North America. And I presume you've got a cornered market there anyway.
Yeah, so we're based in the United States, where up to a third of the world's produce is actually consumed, and so it's a from a consumer standpoint, and from just the size of the market, it was it works out well to be based in the United States. But as we look to build out the rest of our team, we really did not want to be limited to one geographical location. We want to work with the best and the brightest. And it just so happens that we found a fantastic group in KU Leuven, in collaboration with KU Leuven in Belgium. And so we ended up establishing one of our R&D facilities there that's focused on more of the biological work. Leuven and the area in particular is very rich with talent in that particular field, in that particular area. And so it made a lot of sense for us to establish our headquarters there as well as in the United States. But that really is just the start. Again, the beauty of this technology is its scalability, is its ease of use, which means it can be and will be applied in the most remote locations, and regardless of socioeconomical status or even the infrastructure or the lack thereof. This is a technology that can be used and will be used anywhere in the world. And so we're, of course, starting in the US and Europe naturally, But we're very excited about, especially the developing markets that need this, perhaps as much, if not more, than the current markets that we're launching in.
It's interesting just coming back to Belgium and your lab in Belgium, because there seems to be these hubs of technology and innovation, which once there are a few there which are excelling, it attracts an infrastructure or a community of innovators and leaders. For example, Cultivated Meat in Israel, the Singapore hub, North Carolina. And was that something in particular in Belgium that they had these particular skills, particularly post harvest?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're spot on in terms of two factors really. The first is just the general startup ecosystem that's available in Belgium, and the incentives which then have to go back to the government, and the credit goes back to the Belgian government there, that they recognize that to attract cutting edge startups, high tech startups such as Ryp Labs, there has to be some incentives there, and such as tax credits, for example, that will really help these cash strapped startups to establish a presence there and grow. So that was one element, was just the startup ecosystem in general. And then when you look at the talent pool of microbiologists and physiologists and plant physiologists and whatnot, it also, just as you noted, you get one or two successful companies in the region, they start to attract the talent, and then it starts to make a lot of sense for other companies to move there so that they can capitalize on that talent. And then being geographically located right there next to KU Leuven, where there is a lot of very bright and talented scientists graduating on a you know on an annual basis, gives us the kind of talent that we're looking for at Ryp Labs.
It's good to hear as well, because you have to have that sort of pool of talent fueling your business so that you can focus on all the other things. And let's get to distribution now. So we understand the science well. You've explained the science and also the location, and that you're expanding into the rest of the world. And something like you have, it's so scalable, and that's just the brilliance of Sticks Fresh, isn't it? You can just pretty much create it, make it anywhere. Do you have any manufacturing facilities elsewhere in the world?
So we're currently our manufacturing takes place primarily in Seattle. That's where we're starting, but really, again, in the spirit of developing this technology that can be applied anywhere in the world, we've developed these modular manufacturing facilities that can be really drop shipped anywhere in the world. And what this will allow us to do is, especially after coming out of COVID and seeing how the supply chain can completely collapse almost overnight, and the challenges that various businesses and even everyday people were experiencing because of those supply chain issues and challenges, uh, can be circumvented when we are able to manufacture this in other locations around the world and not be limited to one centralized location that ships everywhere. And also from just being a climate tech technology, being a climate tech company, as Oscar has mentioned, um, you know, in that spirit, aligns better with our mission to reduce our carbon emissions of shipping product all over the world and actually manufacturing right then and there.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about your supply chain, how transparent it was, Oscar, particularly in the type of ingredients that you use to create your product.
Yes, that's absolutely right, and you point out an interesting point because as we are doing the early development, we are always thinking many steps ahead, right? When we scale these products to levels where it might be challenging to procure them, supply chain is definitely something that we are always very mindful of. During the COVID times, with big disruptions to the supply chain, I think that was a very interesting learning experience for a lot of companies like us and ourselves, for sure, to plan for it.
Do you feel like you're getting a lot of support because that's your remit, because you have a something which is sustainable, that is a low carbon footprint? Do you think you're more attractive to investors, and certainly you're within the regulation of the countries you're supplying to?
Absolutely. It plays a huge role. I think, one of the things that I like to point out to Claire is when we first started about 5 years ago, and we'd go and we'd visit some of the pilot customers we're working with today. They'd have an R&D team of a couple people that just did everything you can imagine. From, yes, shelf life extension technology, sustainability, but also to machinery and the vision systems they have on their processing lines, and everything you can imagine R&D, right? And so you were talking to this person that had a lot going on, and was just working on various projects. Well, fast forward a few years later, and it's really all about timing, because what we noticed and what we learned was that these very same pilot customers that we were working with 5 years ago that just had a couple of R&D people now have an entire department or division that's particularly focused on just sustainability and shelf life extension technologies. And so from that standpoint, it's just been amazing to see how this has evolved over the last few years, and that sustainability now is at the forefront of everyone's mind, and especially food waste. And from an investor standpoint, I think this is really one of the easiest pitches we've ever had to do, right? Because food waste just resonates with everyone. Everyone, regardless of their social income, their status, where they are in the world, they experience food waste at some level. And so at the end of the day, we're just talking to people, right? If they're whether they're a VC or an angel investor or just an average Joe just walking down the street, it resonates with everyone. Everyone experiences food waste, and everyone can understand, the value of having something as simple as a sticker that you can apply to your food or your package of fruit to extend the shelf life.
Tell me about the sort of the technology and how it's developed and evolved over 10 years. I've spoken to other people who have created something, a novel product, who have said, like, 10 years ago, we couldn't have created this. Is that something which you would agree with? Or would you say for Stick Fresh, actually, everything was there already because you're mimicking nature, so it was just putting all the parts together?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question, Claire. I think a couple of perspectives to that. I think for scientists and technologists to look at nature to get inspiration from, and then maybe like apply some of the solutions that the nature has already evolved. That's always a good idea, as at least as a starting point. In terms of why these kind of sustainability oriented and more environmental friendly solutions now, as opposed to 10 years ago, 20 years ago, as you know, there is a very big desire globally across the world through many governments and regulatory agencies and bodies, and from the consumers too, to move away from synthetic pesticides, things that can actually be harmful to the environment for or to human health and what have you. I think that is one of the big reasons why these naturally inspired solutions that are already in nature and figured out a way of existing in that ecosystem are kind of like starting to gain more traction right now. And of course, combined with their efficacy and state-of-the-art engineering and science applications and perspectives to kind of bring those solutions together and then make them applicable to some real-world situations. That's probably what you're seeing right now, the convergence of all these forces coming together right now.
And timely, and really we're running out of time, so it couldn't come any quicker. I mean, it's so imperative and important that people like you are part of the solution so we can get to where we need to be. Tell me about countries. I'm just throwing this in here really, because we were talking to a company about vertical farming and refrigeration, etc. And there are countries out there that refrigeration is not really a part of their household utility. And I presume something like your product works really well and is cost effective. Is that correct? I'm thinking about India actually, particularly through the sort of pre-monsoon where everything is just too hot and food probably wastes very quickly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you're once again spot on with that assessment, Claire. That the beauty of this technology and its potential is that it doesn't require complex infrastructure to be in place. It doesn't require large capital equipment to be applied. It's quite simple. and it can be applied, and it has been applied and tested both at room temperature and at refrigerated temperatures. And so, of course, depending on the environmental conditions, whether it's applied in refrigeration or applied at room temperature, the results vary. But we have definitely shown that we can extend the shelf life of certain produce applying it at room temperature and at hotter temperatures. It's a bigger challenge, but it's a problem that you have to come at from a variety of different angles. And so this is particularly why this technology has the potential that it has in developing countries that lack that kind of infrastructure.
So tell me, just give me an example of how many days you can extend, say, let's talk about a mango, which is quite versatile and quite a hardy fruit, to be honest. How with one of your stickers, how long would it last for, say, in a temperature which is above average for that season?
Yeah, so it would really depend, of course, obviously on the variety of the mango and the existing shelf life. But we've seen, we've added anywhere from 2 days to the shelf life of certain mangoes under certain conditions, up to 14 days. And yeah, and that really depends, of course, on the type of mango. And this is why it's, going back to the question of, how this technology has continued to evolve and what was possible 10 years ago and what is possible now, is that we're learning as we go. And this is a very complex problem to solve, because people forget that just because that fruit has been picked off the tree, it's still a living, breathing organism, that has an immune system that is impacted considerably by even just a variation of a couple of degrees in temperature. And so we take all these things into consideration, and we're taking all these factors into play, and developing something that can work for the customer under their specific environmental conditions.
And when you talk about the customer, we're not just talking about big supermarkets here. It's restaurants, it's airlines. I mean, the applications are, it just pushes into every part of society.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And again, this is what's particularly exciting, and really why we love this technology, because it can be applied anywhere along the supply chain. However, we always have to remind ourselves, and as any prudent startup should do, if you try to do everything, you'll end up doing nothing. And so we're particularly focused on the larger distributors and packing houses and the larger retailers at this point in time. uh, you know, Large centralized operations. They control their fruits quite, through standardized steps throughout their supply chain. So it gives us more predictability in the outcome of shelf life extension. However, as Ozgur and the great team behind Ozgur continues with the development and R&D work that they're doing today, we'll be able to further optimize the technology so that as we go either up or down the supply chain into where the market then becomes a lot more fragmented, there's a lot more variability in how people use and how people treat their fruits. We believe, and we have full confidence in our team to be able to further optimize the technology so that it can be one day, you as an end consumer can go pick up a pack of the stickers, go home and apply it directly to your fruit, and see the benefits of the technology right there in your fridge.
What's next? So you've talked about the versatility of your product, and it's not just stickers; it can actually be in a base within fruits, etc. Where do you go next? Where do you go next with it, with the innovation and what you've learned so far?
Yeah, that's another excellent question, Claire. So like we alluded to several times, we are really focusing very hard on developing and strengthening our technology platform, and that means that investigating different compounds that might actually be effective in different kinds of applications or use cases, investigating different materials and substances to use in our products to contain and deliver those substances. So we are doing a lot of materials engineering, a lot of biological sciences to continue strengthening and developing our technology platform. So that's one part of it. But in the front end, what you would see from that is enabling of many different types of products that are suitable and that are more optimized for many different use cases, either from a from a shape and application form factor perspective, or from a use case perspective, maybe like different temperatures, different climates, different types of fruits. That is really, our technical vision to continue strengthening this technology platform to enable many different types of products for different use cases.
I mean, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, and particularly referring back to COVID, and some of the inoculations had such a very limited shelf life, which meant probably a lot was lost. It does translate, doesn't it? It's something that you're creating there. I'm sure there has to be applications away from perishable fruit.
Absolutely. We're particularly focused on fruits and vegetables today, right? Where we will naturally see opportunities beyond fruits and vegetables is continuing down, further into the food industry, including meat, seafood, dairy, grains, alternative meats. But then what we've already started to see is potential application in the cut flower industry, for example. So believe it or not, roses and cut flowers suffer from very much of the same problems that fruits and vegetables have today. The reason why we ended up in KU Leuven is because our former chief scientific officer was working on these compounds for the past 15 years on the human application side of things. So there's definitely applications beyond just the food industry when it goes back to what Ozgur had mentioned, which is biomimicry, natural solutions that are right there in front of us that we can harness and apply in our everyday life.
It's fantastic. It's really inspiring. And my final question really is, from being a startup to scaling up, let's talk about leadership. You've got your product, you know that you can scale up. How do you then manage the challenges of being able to make it happen successfully and still keep your sanity?
That's another great question, Claire. So I'll say, number one is, again, we've said it several times here on the call, focus, staying very focused and having clarity in terms of what our short-term and our long-term objectives are, building a fantastic team of much smarter, much more capable people than myself. And I'm sure, it extends to Steve and Ozgur as well. And then setting them up for success. That's our number one responsibility here, is providing them with the resources necessary to be successful. And then the last piece that's quite important is also just more on the human side of things, is to just remember to pause and look how far you've gotten and celebrate these successes. Because often as a startup, we're always caught up into what's next. We won that award at COP27, and literally a couple hours later, we're on calls and thinking, okay, what's next? What do we have to do next? And so, just taking that time to recognize how far along we've come, I think is important for any startup, and motivating for what's still to come ahead.
Fantastic. Well, to both of you, first of all, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom and your insight. And just huge applause and congratulations to all your achievements so far, not only because you are successful, but because you're solving a massive global problem and something which has to be addressed now rather than just down the line. So we appreciate all the work that you have done. Ozgur and Moody, thank you very much for your time. So huge gratitude going out there to Ryp Labs. My thanks to you also for listening. I'm Clare Nasir, and this is Cultivating Conversations, a Chaseman Global production.